Welcome to the It's Better Together podcast, where intelligent conversations turn dreams into action, with hosts Marcy Stout and Allison Nissen. Each episode highlights inspirational women and practical business advice from the Revel Coach Tuesday at 2 live programs. From building a website to securing more clients, we cover topics that are interesting to you. In this highlight reel of Tuesday at 2, we speak with Carolyn Stine of Carolyn Stine Consulting, who believes developing an authentic personal brand enhances our businesses and influences the market. Discover ways to build a connection with your clients through personal stories. Let's meet Carolyn.
And because the algorithm has changed so much historically, it used to be very easy for people to build a following, or a lot of people buy their followers. So truly, if you look at those metrics, even likes, it could be bots. There's no guarantee that if you have X amount of followers or getting X amount of likes, that any of those people have any real connection to your brand, that they're converting, that they're, potential people who could be sharing you with their network, which is another valuable KPI. So it's really just about kind of, again, tailoring the strategy, the way you're showing up, and then the metrics that you're measuring them by based on what the needs of the business are. Because again, just saying likes and followers, I'm like, we can do better than that. But that's, that's what I help with.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny because, many of us are moms and we always try to teach our teenage daughters, like, that's not important. That doesn't define you. And then when you're an entrepreneur, you're like, but it does define you. Like, you need more likes, you need more followers. So it's a funny, it's a nice thing to hear you say, because you're right. It is like a vanity thing. So can you share a little bit more? It does seem like in this world of when you have an opportunity to share who you are, who your brand is, the right buyers are more connected to you and they're going to want to follow you and engage with you. So it's a way of connecting. But what if you have the solopreneur that's kind of a little more bashful or not interested in sharing, those like real personal stories? Like how do you handle that type of balance for a client that might not want to?
No, that's such a good question. And again, like the information that I've been sharing thus far has really been via my work with brands who I think that I view a little bit differently than an individual per se. Again, I think that strategy would be a little bit different and very specifically tailored to who that was. But if we're really talking about individuals, or people who are brands where there's truly kind of a face of that brand. I would say I used to be that person. I used to be the one who was kind of bashful and didn't want to show up. It's so much easier to post photos of food and your trips and, the New York City skyline, like I used to do, than it is to kind of show up and be vulnerable and talk about things and wonder, what if people don't agree or what if they don't like that? I know just based on my personal experience, but also just kind of working in this industry and observing this in many different ways through many different accounts, and talking to a lot of people. There's usually legitimately very, very little downside to showing up and to being more personal in an authentic and constructive way. That doesn't mean, just going on willy-nilly and, word vomiting about your entire day. If you want to do that, that's okay too. No judgment. But I do think that in general, whether you're a brand, a person, whatever it is, in this day and age especially, people care so much about feeling connected to a brand, even if it's at a subconscious level. Like they're putting their dollars, they're putting their traffic, their engagement, XYZ, with people, with brands they do feel a connection to. And once you have that loyalty, I think you have it, potentially for life. But I think that the storytelling and the why and the how is really important to communicate instead of, or, in addition to perhaps, the bright, shiny, fun things. I think that it's the human element that really resonates.
Carolyn, the world has changed. So you've been working in brands and in this atmosphere for about 10 years, is what you've said. So I'm curious, the evolution of how it's changed. And so 10 years ago, we were taught maybe not to be quite as vulnerable. And now that's where we want to be. And yet we also are telling everyone to be careful when you're vulnerable. So how do you balance that?
That is such a good question. Are you referring to cancel culture?
Well,
A little bit. Okay. I was actually
talk more about that too.
Yeah, I was actually just listening. The Daily, the New York Times podcast. They did a two-part podcast special on cancel culture and kind of the history of it and how it came to be such a player on the global stage the other day, which was really, really interesting. It's so funny because when I was working in corporate, I worked in fashion for about 8 years, and then I worked in food. My last corporate job was at Chobani at the corporate headquarters in New York. And I always kind of managed the digital platforms, marketing strategy, operations, all of that. And there used to be, I think, just such an emphasis and an understanding that it needed to be this slick, high production value, aspirational thing. That was the driving force behind all of our marketing always, regardless of industry. And I'm not sure exactly what the turning point is, but I think definitely at least in the past 2 or 3 years, there has been a shift towards kind of the raw, the real, the authentic, the human, the messing up and the not being perfect, which I think is a great thing. I think it's led to some inauthentic moments, of course, too, where, you see a perfect feed and then, somebody puts a picture up being like, I had a tough day and is trying to, get those follows. But for the most part, I think people generally can tell when somebody's being sincere. And I think that really, really resonates with people. And I think as long as people are going to show up on every platform saying any number of things, and you might not agree with all of it, and that's okay. But I think that's the beauty of being able to curate who you follow as well and who's showing up in your feed and making sure that you feel like you resonate with them, so that whether you're putting something out there to be consumed or you're a consumer, making sure that alignment is there, I think is important.
I have another question, follow up on that. This is going to sound like a weird shift, but okay. I needed to find someone to fix the air vent for my roof, right? So there's a vent up there that it's on top of the roof, and someone gave me a couple of names, and so I go on social media to see where they are, right? And so is that really what people are doing? So it's someone like me. I might not follow this person, but I go on, I look at their picture and their image and what they're actually sharing. Is it a whole bunch of successful jobs? Like, oh, look, I've done this job and this job and this job. And now, versus someone that just has 3 pictures on their Instagram account. And you're like, I don't know, they could try a little harder. I mean, is that really what I'm looking at?
That's so funny. I don't think I've ever looked up somebody from an air vent question perspective on Instagram. Why not? But I think you bring up an interesting point that Instagram in particular has become this really interesting touch point during a sales funnel process for establishing validity in a way and trust and just affirmation in this weird way. People, even if, it doesn't matter if you have 50 followers, 500, 5,000, 50,000, whatever it is. But people intrinsically go to Instagram to check and see if they think you're legit or not. And then pending what they need or want, they might, go further into that rabbit hole, try to get a sense of who you are or whatever. But in this case, from the business perspective, I think that's absolutely a thing. And again, this person who might be cleaning the air vents does not need to be, spending all of their time on their Instagram account. I don't think they're going to see the best ROI on that, but having some sort of presence there, even if they're posting, once a week, once every 2 weeks with, a testimonial or a link to Yelp, whatever it is. Again, this is not my area of expertise in particular, but it behooves them to be there. I don't think they will see any downside to having that, even if they have, a nine grid filled out and aren't posting regularly. I think people look.
I do. I know I do. It's fun because it is so easy to kind of see and get a feel for the essence of who the person is or what's important to them. Yeah. And just an invitation for any of the guests on the phone. You guys are welcome to jump in if you have a question at any time. And we know you can always use the chat box too. So if anybody wants to talk about a different platform or anything like that. But Carolyn, I'd love to talk more about how you get somebody to figure out their story. So say you've got this solopreneur. They are pretty clear on what they want to do or the problems they want to solve for their customers. They've got a decent idea of who their customers are. And now it's time to figure out like, what stories do they share? And that could be because they're one-on-one trying to get a new client, or Instagram, or a blog. Can you tell us a little bit, like, just like the work you do to figure out like, what stories do I need? And do you tell like 20 stories? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could tell you there was a specific formula, but there's not. That's why I think that there's value in just like that, finding the right person to work with and that human connection, because it's me kind of going in there and figuring out what I feel like, first of all, you know, what makes you tick, what's relevant to your brand, and then how that manifests on this platform in an intentional way. I mean, I think that the first thing, if we're talking about a solopreneur, for example, I think that getting really, really clear on who the audience is that they're targeting, very specifically, what they look like, what they sound like, what they consume, what they read, what times of the day they're on Instagram, all of these details are really, really important, because if you're targeting that group of people, I think that, and there's going to be always a content mix, you know, a mix of formats, a mix of content, you know, a few pillars that you're coming back to when you're structuring your Instagram feed. But I think that you need to speak to the pain points of that specific consumer, and how you can provide value. And a piece of that providing value isn't just the services you offer, but them feeling like they're getting to know you as a person, so that they come to the place where you're the only person who can fix this for them because they feel connected to you. Like, that's the value you bring. It's your X factor. Nobody else can replicate that. I think that's kind of what you're going for. And it looks a little bit different for everybody, depending on the person, their service, etc. So I'm sorry if that's kind of vague, but that's generally how I think about it.
All right, so I'm going to go into the Revel Coach consultation mode.
Yeah.
No.
It's our call, so we can ask questions.
Yeah, anything, it's all on the table.
So Marcy and I share a platform, and then together we have Tuesday at 2 and Revel Score. So those are ours together. But then we also have separate things that we do under the same umbrella. Would it be best to have different Instagram accounts for each of those? So our Revel Coach is very curated right now. It's pretty much,
I'm pulling it up. I'm listening, but I want to have it in front of me.
It's pretty much Tuesday at 2. And I love the way it looks. I love the way it feels. It shows up on the front page of our website. And to me, that's great. But then how do you incorporate, or how would you suggest incorporating the other things? And this could be like, you know, anybody that has sort of multiple streams of income.
Yeah.
Like sub-brands.
Sub-brands, right. So what would you recommend?
I generally, and again, always case-by-case basis, I generally am a believer, especially if you are a smaller brand, have a smaller following, and are in the process of growing that fragmenting your traffic between accounts is not a good idea. I think that keeping things consolidated in one place, having one home, is a net positive. You're not asking people who, by and large, might be coming to you and coming across your page for the first time to go off to different places. You want to keep them there. You want them to spend as much time as possible there, and then potentially to go through to your website, XYZ, to click any links you might offer, to sign up for your newsletter if that's something that's important to your brand. You know, I think that sending them off in different places, especially if it's smaller, might not make sense. But I mean, within the Instagram too, there's not just your feed to leverage. There's your stories, there's, you know, Instagram lives, all of these different things. So when we talk about showing up on your page, you know, you have your feed content, but I think that a great way to utilize it, for example, you know, for you guys who are doing this incredible programming, making connections, building community, maybe you're leveraging Instagram lives and then archiving those, having short conversations, you know, checking in with past people who did Tuesdays at 2, or, you know, doing like a question of the week via stories with your audience and taking that information and pushing them over to lives or to a future session for Tuesdays at 2. I think there's really interesting ways to kind of create circular content with multiple touch points within one platform organically that kind of feed each other and get people excited about what's coming in, and also feeling like they kind of have skin in the game too.
I love it. That's so well said. So side conversation with Allison. I feel like that is like kind of what we keep thinking, because like Tuesday at 2 is the heart of where we are. And then the other stuff is kind of more referral based. Like we don't want to work with everyone. So that kind of gives a little peace of mind. And I have a follow-up question, Carolyn, for you, and then we need to go. We have some questions in the chat box too. Like an Instagram Live, if we were to take a platform like this and actually have it live, do we need like permission from the other people, like the other people on the show? Like, or is it?
I would always ask. I can't imagine if someone, like for me, for example, I can't imagine I'd be showing up here doing this over Zoom and I would say, but no, you can't put it on Instagram. You know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine a lot of people would have an issue with that. It can't hurt to, to ask, even in your initial email where you're setting up the Tuesdays at 2, whatever it is. But yeah, the IG Lives, you can choose to record them and to save them on your feed or not, as an incentive potentially for people to tune in at a certain time. Again, different ways to do it, different strategies. But I think it's a cool place to show up, and it's free and easy. You can do it from anywhere like this.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Because we keep debating some things. Facebook Live is live. And so anyway, so back to the show, back to everyone else. So we do have a question.
Enough about me.
There's somebody commented, just having that fine line between I'm so proud to be, like a self-congratulatory feeling message, but still letting others that I have actual stuff going on. I know this person that wrote it is fine with talking, so I might have you elaborate a little bit if you want. But does that make sense, Carolyn?
It makes perfect sense, and I have so much to say on this subject. Do you want that person to elaborate, or do you want me to jump in? Up to you.
Why don't you jump in to start?
Okay. It's so funny because I actually find this many times, this line of questioning and self-doubt to be a uniquely female issue in a lot of ways, because I feel like the idea of bragging about our achievements feels like the antithesis of what a woman should be, which is, we're humble. We're not talking about ourselves. We're supporting others, but we're not sharing our wins. And I feel like it's so important for us to be doing that. And I had a business coach last year who we would start off every call. She would say, you're not allowed to say anything or ask any questions until you share your brags from the week. Like, brag to me. And it was so uncomfortable. The first time she said that, I was like, no, I'm not doing that. There's something that felt like it went against every fiber of my being, what I should be, how I should be showing up. But I started seeing some people, especially coaches, people who I really resonated with on Instagram and their platforms, showing up and talking about their successes, and seeing them do that made me want to start doing that. And of course, you can, like anything, you can do things with finesse and with taste, and not just, I don't know, not doing it in an untasteful way. But I think that it is important to be talking about the good stuff and congratulating ourselves, because I really think that when we see it, it encourages other women to do the same, and we should all be celebrating each other.
And what's an example? So I do feel like most of us as buyers, like consumers, we do look to see the positive reviews, and you want to work with someone that's confident. They know that they're going to get the results that they're promising. So it's pretty obvious that we need to do it. But I think I totally understand where the struggle comes in. So how would you start? What's a easy way of expressing a win without showing that you're, being too, you're bragging too much or being too arrogant?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I'll see if I can, I know I posted about this maybe in the past few weeks, maybe a month ago, but I wrote a post on my personal Instagram about how I had the biggest week ever. I had literally 4 speaking gigs, for lack of a better word. Gigs, that's a terrible word, but you know what I mean. And it just felt like the culmination of a lot of things. And I wrote in the post, not just hey, I did all this cool stuff, but I wrote about how much I struggled with whether I should share it or not, and how I went back and forth about whether that was right or wrong, and how it felt really self-promotional to me, and that didn't sit well with me. And that's what I wrote about. So I was sharing about it, but I was also pulling back the curtain about kind of the struggles behind it. And that really resonated with people. Mm-hmm. So I think that also it's not just hey, I did this, but why is that important to you? And what did it take for you to get to that point? I feel like that's the stuff that people will also feel connected to, in addition to just I did this thing. It's the so what, if you will.
So it's a matter of sharing the how you arrived at that success, because no one just plops down in the middle of success, right? It's a long, windy road to get there.
And
so
it's also very easy. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I was just going to say it's the long, windy road, and there's tree roots in the way, and then there's hills, and there's
pandemics,
all that stuff, right? So it's like, there's challenges. It's, you don't just stumble upon success. Occasionally that happens, but very rarely.
And it's also, on Instagram, and I think this is changing, but Instagram for so long was such a highlight reel, and it's so easy to go on and just see the perfect relationship, the perfect family, the perfect career, the perfect home, the perfect meal, the perfect trip, all of this. And so I think that humanizing it a little bit is always a good thing. And I think also whether you're, are a client or looking for clients, I think it's okay for potential business partners to see your weaker moments too. I think it makes you human, and I think it makes people feel more connected to you overall.
So there's another question in the chat box. How much do you talk about your product and service versus who you are on the website? What do you lead with?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm torn about whether I should talk about in relation to me or brands I've worked with. I think in general, it totally depends on the platform. And that's why showing up on Instagram, for example, is very different from how you would show up on your website. I think that when it comes to the website of a service, a brand, a business, a product, whatever it is, I think that you're probably going to have more of your hard-hitting copy and information and CTAs, call to actions on your website around what that is and why they need it and how you get it. I think that that's going to be more action-oriented. That being said, you also want to have your story and, have all of that there. But if you're thinking about, for example, Instagram potentially as an entry point to your website in your ecosystem, Instagram is going to be more of where the storytelling, the personal moments where that lives. But I think that somebody, by the time they're going to the website of the brand or business, they want to know they're along in that funnel a little bit more. And I think that's where they want to find out how to book, how to try, how to buy, whatever that is. So I think that more of that, I'm going back to look at the original question just so I can make sure I look at the wording. I think that more of that hard-hitting stuff about your product and service lives on the website, and it can be integrated into some of your things on Instagram, but I don't think of Instagram as a hard-hitting sales platform. I think that's where it comes to life and you have the storytelling. Website is where that's where you're going to get it.
To watch a live Tuesday at 2 program with Revel Coach, visit us at revelcoach.com. Until next time.